Well, in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Israel's foreign minister said that we do not want to rule Gaza, and they look forward to handing over the responsibility of governing Gaza to an international coalition. So let's bring in our senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara. The foreign minister, the defence minister, the prime minister, the US security advisor, spokesperson John Kirby, all talking about the day after the war finishes. It's all nuanced, but it really does seem like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
They're lost. They are completely lost. I would tell you, looking in hindsight now, the last month of this war, that Israel's assumptions, Israel's tactics, even Israel's endgame have changed. The only constant is the destruction of Palestinians' lives and livelihoods. That's the only thing that's been constant the past month. Israel just wants to kill as many Palestinians as possible and destroy as many civilian infrastructure as possible. In as far as the end game, clearly the three Israeli officials and that of the American position differ. They don't know what to do in the end game. And clearly there are these fantasies that are so farcical that they don't even merit a commentary, such as when the foreign minister says, we're going to bring the Europeans and the Americans and the Islamic countries to govern while we maintain our military presence in Gaza. I mean, the chutzpah, as it were, is breathtaking. Clearly they don't know what to do, not just with the end game, Suhail. They don't know what to do today. I've just seen a report by CBS News that says after a month of killing and more than 10,000 civilian deaths, Israel was able to reach and kill only 60 principal Hamas fighters. 60. 10,000 killed and tens of thousands of wounded. And that's where the Israelis are. They certainly cannot reach the Hamas fighters underground. The resistance continues. And clearly they're even shooting rockets. But Israel's shooting aim has been the civilians. It wants Gaza to pay a price for October 7. It wants the people. And we've heard that from the Israeli president, that there are no innocents in Gaza. And hence, they are shooting, they are bombing, they are in the midst of a genocide without a clear aim of what's next.
They might not have a clear aim, yet Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, who's done his whistle-stop tour of the Middle East, had his hands slapped, is now in Japan at the G7 foreign ministers meeting, is talking about a clear voice on Gaza. He himself knows that not everybody at the G7 agrees with him. France is certainly one, and now, Emmanuel Macron will be under pressure because a newswire has dropped that even opposition lawmakers, some of them who are supporters of Macron on certain occasions when legislation gets through in France, want a ceasefire. He's under pressure. There'll be other leaders there under pressure from not just their own politicians and opposition politicians, but also from their public too.
Absolutely. Look, even now the United States is moving away from just a mere humanitarian pause. Now they are talking about a number of days at least, because they're also bringing in the hostage issue to it. But clearly, as you state rightly, the Western and the international public opinion are getting antsy, restless, in fact angry, especially here in the region. The Arab street is boiling in anger at the sight of this massacre that continues unabated in Gaza. But unfortunately, we have a superpower that has been so reckless, so irresponsible. Personally, I would think even so foolish to box itself in behind an Israeli government that is so fanatic and so fascist that its only aim now is to take revenge. And contrary to what the spokesperson of the U.S. national security is saying, this is not a war for defending the Israeli people. This is a war to defend the Israeli occupation, which really poses the question, now that we all know that the occupation has failed, what are the Israelis proposing? More occupation. Occupation of the rest of Gaza. Now that we know that force and violence has not worked, what are the Israelis proposing? More force, more violence, which begs the question that they are, absolute morons. Because when you know if you've tried a thing once and again, for decades and it hasn't worked, to try it once more is a sign of utter madness.
Does this create a huge problem for Biden? Because, well, it does create a huge problem for the American president because, you know, you have this superpower who has aligned itself with Israel very clearly to the global audience and yet is finding it very difficult to decouple itself in the months ahead, if and when this war should finish, in whatever format it finishes in. It's got to try and bring the international community with it, and having, you might, staked its claim so clearly to Tel Aviv, it's going to be difficult to win over those that were sceptics to start with.
Absolutely, and it's rather timid attempts have been so clumsy. I mean, diplomatically speaking, they've just been so clumsy because look what happened over the past month. In the first half of the month, the American administration boxed itself completely behind the Netanyahu government, parroting one soundbite after another, one falsehood after another about a human shield, about the need to protect its civilians, about why war must be, why Hamas is like ISIL, and all that humbug. It just continues to repeat one falsehood after another. When that did not work out, and clearly the Arab world and other American allies are discovering slowly but surely, but this is all falsehood, the Americans, instead of distancing themselves from Israel and taking a more sober view, they decided that they're going to start talking about the day after. But we are in the middle of war now. We are in the middle of genocide. Talking about the day after in these fanciful, farcical ways about a two-state solution, when we look at the reality and see that President Biden cannot lean on the Israeli Prime Minister to force a 2-hour humanitarian pause, whatever that means, he is promising a two-state solution. Well, how could anyone believe the American administration? How could the American administration have any credibility when, on the one hand, it cannot force a 2-hour pause for humanitarian purposes, while talking so fancifully about two-state solution? They are stuck. They are lost. They are facing a vicious resistance in Gaza, and the only people who are paying the price for it are tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, unfairly and unjustly. This must end.
And we'll see when it does, Marwan. But for the moment, thank you. Marwan Bishara, our senior political analyst.